Joseph, now renamed Ethan, had always thought of himself as a calm and rational guy. At 35, he prided himself on being a laid-back, easygoing husband who trusted his wife, Lauren, completely. Lauren, 33, was the type of person who could light up any room with her energy, and Ethan loved that about her. Their story unfolded in Austin, Texas, where they lived in a charming two-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Ethan wasn't the jealous type, nor did he mind Lauren having close friends. In fact, when she introduced him to Chloe, her best friend from college, Ethan figured it was just another extension of Lauren's life he could embrace. At first glance, Chloe seemed like a delightful addition to their circle. She was 32, witty, and had an infectious laugh. She and Lauren shared countless inside jokes that Ethan could never hope to understand, but he didn't mind. It made him happy to see his wife so joyful. However, over time, Chloe's presence in their lives began to feel less like a friendly visit and more like an uninvited occupation. Chloe had a way of making herself at home in a way that Ethan couldn't quite ignore. For instance, she didn't just drop by occasionally, she practically lived at their house. It wasn't unusual for Ethan to come home from work and find Chloe sprawled out on their couch, munching on chips and binge-watching TV as if she owned the place. Lauren thought nothing of it. "Chloe's like family," she'd say with a carefree shrug, as if that explained why Chloe had commandeered their Netflix account and devoured the last of Ethan's favorite pistachio ice cream. Ethan tolerated it, mostly. He wasn't the type to make waves, especially when Lauren seemed so happy to have Chloe around. But then came the night at the Blue Orchid, a cozy upscale restaurant downtown. Ethan had planned a romantic dinner to celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary. He booked a quiet corner table, complete with a bouquet of Lauren's favorite tulips waiting for her. Things were perfect, until Chloe showed up. She breezed into the restaurant with a bottle of wine in hand and an all-too-familiar smirk on her face. "Surprise," she announced, plopping herself into the seat Ethan had pulled out for Lauren. "I figured I'd join the two of you. I couldn't let you have all the fun." Ethan clenched his jaw, his annoyance barely concealed. Lauren, on the other hand, greeted Chloe with open arms. "I'm so glad you're here," Lauren exclaimed, completely ignoring the tension in Ethan's expression. That night marked the beginning of Ethan's growing unease about Chloe's role in their lives. As time went on, Chloe's constant presence in their lives became more than a minor inconvenience, it was an undeniable strain. She wasn't just visiting, she was infiltrating. For example, Chloe didn't just stay for dinner on occasion, she seemed to think their guest room was hers. It wasn't unusual for Ethan to find her lounging around in the mornings, wearing one of Lauren's bathrobes and sipping coffee as if she lived there. "She's going through a rough time," Lauren explained one evening when Ethan finally brought it up. "Her breakup really hit her hard. I told her she could stay for a bit until she's back on her feet." That bit turned into months. Chloe quickly settled into their home, bringing along her ever-expanding collection of shopping bags, skincare products, and an oversized cat named Max, who promptly claimed Ethan's favorite armchair. At first, Ethan tried to be understanding. He knew Chloe had just gone through a nasty breakup and probably needed support. But her lack of boundaries began to gnaw at him. She treated their house like a personal crash pad and even started commenting on his every move, from his choice of clothes to how he arranged the pantry. The final straw came one afternoon when Ethan reviewed their monthly credit card statement. A string of unexplained charges caught his eye: fancy dinners, spa visits, and what appeared to be a new designer handbag. "What is this?" Ethan asked Lauren that evening, holding the bill like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Oh," Lauren said casually, not even looking up from her phone. "Chloe needed a little cheering up, so I figured I'd help her out." Ethan's eyebrows shot up. "We're funding her retail therapy now?" Lauren sighed. "Ethan, she's like a sister to me. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Ethan replied, his voice tight. She's freeloading, and you're enabling her. Still, Ethan held his tongue. He didn't want to be the bad guy, especially when Lauren seemed so emotionally invested in Chloe's well-being. But things escalated further when Chloe began inserting herself into their private moments. One night, after Ethan had spent hours preparing a candlelit dinner for him and Lauren, Chloe strolled into the dining room uninvited. "Smells amazing," she exclaimed, grabbing a plate as though the dinner was for her. "Chloe, this is kind of a special night for us," Ethan said, trying to mask his irritation. "Oh, I'll just grab a little and go," Chloe said breezily. But instead, she stayed for hours, monopolizing the conversation with loud stories and unsolicited advice. Ethan knew something had to change, but he couldn't have anticipated how bad things would get. The breaking point came one weekend when Lauren went to visit her parents in nearby San Antonio. Ethan looked forward to some rare peace and quiet, free from Chloe's overbearing presence. But that hope was short-lived. The morning Lauren left, Chloe announced she wasn't feeling well and decided to stay behind. "Don't worry about me," she said, dramatically draping herself over the couch. "I'll just rest here. You won't even know I'm around." Ethan knew better. By early afternoon, Chloe emerged from the guest room wearing one of Ethan's old college sweatshirts and a pair of gym shorts that definitely weren't hers. "This okay?" she asked with a sly grin, tugging at the sweatshirt. "Lauren said you were going to toss it anyway." "Fine," Ethan muttered, not wanting to engage. But Chloe wasn't done pushing boundaries. She plopped onto the couch next to him, much closer than he was comfortable with. "You know," she began, twirling a strand of her hair, "you're always so serious, Ethan. You need to lighten up." "I'm perfectly fine," he replied, inching away from her. Chloe leaned in closer. "You're cute when you lie." Ethan stood abruptly, mumbling something about needing fresh air, and left the house. He drove aimlessly for hours, trying to shake the discomfort crawling under his skin. Was she flirting with him? No, he thought. That couldn't be right. But over the next few days, Chloe's behavior became impossible to ignore. She started finding excuses to touch his arm, compliment his appearance, and corner him with unnecessary small talk. Then came the afternoon she barged into his home office unannounced. "You've been working too hard," she declared, leaning against his desk with a glass of wine in hand. "Why don't you take a break? I could help you unwind." Ethan froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Chloe, I think you should leave," he said, his tone firm. She pouted, her tone turning playful. "Oh, come on. Don't be so uptight." "I'm not kidding," Ethan snapped. "This is my home, and I've had enough of your behavior." For a moment, Chloe looked genuinely taken aback. But then she rolled her eyes and shrugged. "Fine. Whatever. You're no fun anyway." She sauntered out, leaving Ethan fuming. When Lauren returned from her trip, Ethan didn't waste a second. He laid everything out, Chloe's invasive behavior, her inappropriate comments, and how deeply uncomfortable she was making him. To his disbelief, Lauren dismissed it all with a wave of her hand. "That's just Chloe being Chloe," she said. "You're overreacting." Ethan stared at her, dumbfounded. "Overreacting? She's crossed every line imaginable, and you're okay with that?" Lauren sighed, looking visibly annoyed. "Ethan, she's going through a tough time. Can't you just cut her some slack?" "This isn't about slack," Ethan said, his voice rising. "This is about respect, respect for me, for our marriage, and for our home. If Chloe can't respect that, she has to go." Lauren's jaw tightened. "Ethan, she's not staying forever. Just let her get back on her feet. It's not that big of a deal." "Not that big of a deal?" Ethan repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "She's flirting with me in my own house. How is that not a big deal?" Lauren waved her hand dismissively. Chloe's flirty by nature. She doesn't mean anything by it. You're reading too much into it. Ethan's patience snapped. Flirty by nature or not, it's completely inappropriate. And if you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't just Chloe. The weight of his words hung heavy in the room. Lauren's expression faltered, and she opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Chloe entered the kitchen with her ever-present smirk. "Am I interrupting something?" she asked innocently, though the glint in her eyes betrayed her. "As a matter of fact, yes," Ethan said sharply, his tone cutting. Chloe shrugged and grabbed a bottle of water from the counter. "You two need to relax. You've been so uptight lately." Turning to Lauren, she added, "You've been so stressed. Maybe Ethan needs a distraction to lighten the mood." Lauren let out a nervous laugh, but Ethan was done playing along. "Enough," he said, his voice cold and unwavering. "Chloe, pack your things and leave." Chloe's smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Ethan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I've had enough. You need to go." Lauren's eyes widened. "Ethan, wait. Let's talk about this. Chloe has nowhere else to go." "That's not my problem," Ethan shot back. "She's crossed every boundary, and I'm not tolerating it anymore." Chloe crossed her arms, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Wow, Ethan. You're just as uptight as Lauren says." Ethan turned to Lauren. "This is your best friend. If you want to defend her behavior, fine. But she's not staying here another day. Either she goes, or I will." Lauren's face crumpled. "You don't mean that." Ethan's tone was quiet but firm. "I've never meant anything more." The next morning, Chloe's belongings were packed and stacked neatly by the front door. Ethan had done it himself, leaving no room for negotiation. Chloe fumed silently as she dragged her suitcase toward the door. She turned back one last time. "You're really letting him do this, Lauren?" Lauren didn't answer, her eyes glued to the floor. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "This isn't about letting me do anything. It's about boundaries, something you clearly don't understand." Chloe rolled her eyes and slammed the door behind her. After Chloe left, the house fell into an eerie silence, but the tension between Ethan and Lauren lingered. Lauren seemed distant, always glued to her phone or avoiding eye contact. Ethan tried to move past it, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. One evening, while Lauren was in the shower, she left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. Ethan wasn't one to snoop, but a message preview caught his eye. "Chloe, hope he's not being too difficult. Keep me updated." His stomach churned. What was Chloe still doing in their lives? Against his better judgment, Ethan unlocked the phone. To his surprise, Lauren hadn't changed her passcode. What he found confirmed his worst fears. "Chloe, I can't believe he didn't take the bait. What a waste of time." "Lauren, I know. I thought for sure he'd at least look tempted. He didn't even flinch." "Chloe, men like him are impossible. If he had just gone along with it, it would have been so much easier to make him the bad guy." Ethan's hands trembled as he scrolled through the conversation. Chloe and Lauren had conspired to trap him, to make it seem like he had cheated so Lauren could justify suggesting an open marriage. "Lauren, I'm not sure what to do now. He's so stubborn." "Chloe, relax. Just tell him you're unhappy. Make him think it's his fault. Then suggest the open thing as a solution. He'll cave eventually." Ethan's chest tightened as he read the final exchange. "Lauren, I just need more time to figure out how to bring it up without making him suspicious." "Chloe, you better hurry. If he catches on, we're screwed." Ethan snapped a few photos of the messages as evidence, locked the phone, and put it back on the counter. His mind raced as he tried to process the depth of the betrayal. When Lauren stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she smiled at him. "Everything okay?" Ethan forced a calm expression. "Yeah. Everything's fine." But in his mind, he knew everything was far from fine. Ethan spent the entire night replaying the messages in his mind, each word a reminder of how deeply he had been betrayed. By morning, he had made his decision. This wasn't something he could forgive or move past. That evening, Lauren came home to find Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, her phone placed in front of him. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fury. "Ethan?" she asked, setting her bag down. "What's going on?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Lauren hesitated. "You're scaring me." "What's wrong?" "Sit," he repeated firmly. Lauren slowly sank into the chair, her face pale. Ethan slid the phone across the table. "I read your messages with Chloe." Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "Don't," Ethan snapped. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know. I saw everything, your plan to use Chloe to set me up, to make me look like the bad guy so you could justify your little open marriage fantasy." Lauren's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" Ethan demanded, his voice rising. Tears welled in Lauren's eyes. "It wasn't like that," she stammered. "Don't lie to me." Ethan's voice thundered as he slammed his fist on the table, making Lauren flinch. "You let Chloe invade our home, disrespect me, and manipulate our marriage, all for what? A game?" Lauren broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know what else to do," she cried. "You're so closed off, Ethan. I thought if we tried something new, it might bring us closer." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Closer? You destroyed every ounce of trust we had. This wasn't about us, it was about you, and your selfishness." Lauren reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Ethan, please," she begged. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can work through it." "No, Lauren," he said coldly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice to betray me, to manipulate me, and to destroy our marriage. There's no coming back from that." Lauren's voice broke as she whispered, "Ethan, I love you." He stood, towering over her. "You have a funny way of showing it. Pack your things and leave. Tonight." Lauren's jaw dropped. "You don't mean that." "I've never been more serious," Ethan replied, his tone resolute. When Lauren began sobbing, Ethan grabbed a suitcase from the hallway and placed it in front of her. "Start packing," he said. She cried as she gathered her belongings, her pleas for forgiveness falling on deaf ears. By the time she left, dragging her suitcase behind her, Ethan felt both a sense of loss and a sense of relief. The next morning, Ethan contacted a lawyer to begin divorce proceedings. His attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria, nodded as he explained the situation. "You're doing the right thing," Victoria said firmly. "This kind of betrayal isn't something you can just sweep under the rug." Over the following weeks, Lauren tried reaching out, leaving tearful voicemails and long messages begging for another chance. Ethan didn't respond. The courtroom was tense as Lauren took the stand during the divorce hearing. With tears in her eyes, she painted herself as a victim, claiming Ethan was emotionally unavailable and controlling. Victoria, however, was prepared. "Your Honor," she began, "we have evidence showing that Mrs. Harris and her friend conspired to manipulate Mr. Harris. This was not a case of marital discord, it was calculated deception." She presented screenshots of the messages, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. The judge's ruling was swift. In light of the evidence, this court finds no grounds to grant Mrs. Harris's request for disproportionate division of assets. All marital property will be divided equally. Lauren looked devastated, but Ethan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. In the months that followed, Ethan rebuilt his life. He moved into a sleek downtown loft, threw himself into his work, and even joined a local running club. Slowly, he began to rediscover himself. One evening, as he jogged along the Austin waterfront, Ethan paused to take in the sunset. He smiled, feeling a newfound sense of peace. The betrayal was behind him, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free. As for Lauren, her attempts to lean on Chloe for support led her down a path of embarrassment and failure. A misguided attempt to network at one of Chloe's suggested events turned out to be a pyramid scheme. Videos of Lauren fumbling through a sales pitch at a crowded party went viral, earning her the nickname Pyramid Queen. Ethan heard about it through a mutual acquaintance and couldn't help but chuckle, not out of spite, but because of the poetic justice. By then, Ethan had moved on, content with his new life and the lessons he'd learned. The past no longer defined him, and the future was his to shape.